All right, welcome. Let's talk about overwhelm. So, this is the first in a four-part series I'm going to be doing throughout December 2024 and the first week of January. And it's all about overwhelm. Now, I don't need to tell you that this is highly relevant at the moment. And if I think about just my November so far and how my November's been, how December has started, and the next couple of weeks I've got coming up and what I want to achieve and need to achieve in that time. When I think about where my clients are, what I've been coaching so much on in the last, at least a month, maybe even 6 to 8 weeks, we're all in it right now. We are all feeling the overwhelm. And if you're not feeling the overwhelm, then it could be you're just going through a quiet period, in unusually quiet period, because this is typically a very busy time of the year for everybody. But what I mean by that is this could just be a quiet period that will soon be followed by a more intense period, perhaps in the new year, when things do get more overwhelming for you. And so what I'm saying is, even if you're not in it right now, you're going to find this episode, this session, really useful. And so I want you to stay tuned. So it's where a lot of my clients are right now. It's where I was for, I think, a period of almost about 2 weeks in November before I used the strategy I'm going to teach you in this session, before I used that to really help me get out of overwhelm. So that's what I want to speak to in this episode specifically. So not just overwhelm generally, but I want to speak specifically to getting out of crisis. That's what I've called it. Because there's a difference between managing overwhelm and getting out of it, like when you're in the thick of it and you feel like you can't see a way out, right? It's actually quite hard, I think, to manage something when you are in the thick of it. The managing of overwhelm, I want you to think about it like this, as something that you are doing all of the time, especially as you work in an industry that is constantly requiring so much of you. The demands, they aren't getting any less over time. And so if we accept that it is just a circumstance of being a lawyer, being a Black lawyer, perhaps even more so when you consider all of those special circumstances that we have to navigate as Black lawyers in an overwhelmingly white industry, a white world, right? Overwhelm is something that's never going to be far away. So I want you to have two things at the end of this series. One is the ability to get yourself out of crisis when you find yourself in it, a crisis of overwhelm. And two is to have the tools to be constantly managing overwhelm so that we can reduce the amount of crises that you have, or ideally even eliminate them if you get really good at managing your overwhelm and catching it before you get to crisis point. Okay, so the focus of today then is the getting out of crisis, because that's where I know and I hear so many of you are. And I want to just offer that this is for anybody, any of you who are experiencing overwhelm. So even if you're not a lawyer, even if you're not a Black lawyer, you're going to find this really useful. Stay tuned. I'm hearing this so much at the moment. Almost every other conversation I have with people is about how time is going so quickly. Today is the 2nd of December, so I'm recording this a couple of days before it goes live. And it's that inevitable thing I think we have at the beginning of every month anyway, that questioning of where did the last month go? How did we get here already? But even more so at this time of year because of what December signifies. It signifies the end of the year, doesn't it? It also signifies, of course, for so many of us, Christmas or the festive season. And because of that, it's that sense like, oh my gosh, we're already at that time of the year where there's just so much going on. How did we get here so quickly? And one of the observations as I've been thinking about this and thinking about my relationship with time, which is one of the things I'm going to be speaking to today, why it feels like it's going so quickly. Why does it feel like November was like the start of November was just a week ago and suddenly we're in December? And one of the reasons for sure, which will not come as a surprise to you at all, is the fact that technology, that wonderful thing that was supposed to make our lives easier, and actually, in theory, at the dawn of technology, as we were just starting to enter the digital age, it was going to make us, the dream was it would make us work less, give us more leisure time. But actually what it's done is it's just caused that merging of life and work, and like work just bleeds into life so much. And it just means that the barriers between the two have pretty much disappeared. And what it means is we're able to do so much more, and therefore we do more. So this increase in efficiency means we're doing more instead of doing less, because we're more efficient. We're actually doing more. And crucially, we are being expected to do more and to do it quicker. And so what I'm really thinking about for you and for me, I'm on this journey too, is how can we, I was going to say resist that, but I don't want to suggest resistance in a way that, because resistance can often mean like gripping onto something, or like really holding back from something, or refusing something. And that tends to be like, the tension around that tends to not be the most useful response to any situation, to any change, to any challenge. So it's not a desire to resist it. It's like, how can we stay ahead of it? That's a better way of thinking about it. How can we stay ahead of this experience where we're being required to work harder, deliver more, do everything more efficiently, and do more efficiently? And that feeling that time is just running away from us, and our life is just disappearing. That's how I've had a bit of the feeling I've had. And I don't want that for you. I don't want it for me. And actually, I really do believe, and as I've been working this solution that I'm going to offer you in this session, as I've been working this in my own life over the last couple of weeks, I know that we can do that. I know we can stay ahead of it if we take ownership, if we take responsibility, and if we are proactive. And that's what I'm going to teach you about, talk to in this session. So what you're going to take away then, I want you to be focused on this, is I'm going to give you something that you can do today, literally right now, to get out of overwhelm, the crisis of overwhelm, which is what I'm calling it. So something you can do today to get out of it, but also a strategy that you can keep coming back to again and again whenever you need it. So let's talk about where you are now. You're feeling overwhelmed. And I want you to just check in for a second with what that feels like in your body. Even if you might be listening to this on your commute, or on your way to home from work, or on a walk or something. And even if that is the case and you're not feeling the overwhelm right now, I want you to just have that note to the next time you feel it, to check in with your body and how that feels. So for me, there is just this sort of high frequency vibration, because emotions, like overwhelm is an emotion. I feel overwhelmed. It's an emotion, and we feel it in our bodies, and there are all vibrations in our bodies, but there's a certain frequency level to overwhelm that I can only describe for me feels a little bit like, I don't know, sort of jittery, like I'm tightly, almost like the strings on an instrument. I've been tight, like getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's not that I've felt in the last month or so that I'm going to snap, but it's that awareness that actually there's a limit to how much tighter these strings can get. So you might be feeling that and thinking that there's a limit to how much of this I can take, or I can accept, or I can deal with, and that limit is close. I'm getting close to it. Even if it's not a feeling you have in your body, it may be that just circumstantially, you just even looking around your office, there might be signs that you are in an overwhelm crisis. Like if it's complete chaos around you. I was just looking around my office right now, and actually it's not too bad. One of the first things I do, and this is an additional, like an aside as a tip, one of the first things I do when I'm feeling really overwhelmed is I actually do, to slow myself down, I take a few minutes to just tidy my desk, tidy my office. Like really, and if you're watching this, you'll see my backdrop. of the video is always like, my backdrop is always like calm and ordered. I always get comments from my clients when they come on, or to anyone who meets me. We have a Zoom meeting about how calm and nicely ordered my background is. And I do that intentionally because it does impact how overwhelmed you feel. So that's just a little digression about, like, when talking about the signs of being in overwhelm crisis, look around you. What does your environment say about where your head is right now? So you might have a lot of work, constant demands, tight deadlines. Okay, so that's pretty par for the course, isn't it? When you are a lawyer, I know that's normal, but there's a different level to it. There's a different energy to it. When you're in a crisis of overwhelm, it starts to feel like a piling up that's too much. And what's unique and special about this time of year, and maybe not even unique, because I know many of you have different kind of crunch times throughout the year, but what's particularly interesting about this time of year is, as well as there being lots of deadlines, everybody wanting everything done by the end of the year, there's also the festive season, right? So if you celebrate Christmas, then that is looming, and it means lots of extra social stuff that you both want to be doing and maybe are expected to be doing within the office, within the work environment. And then there's all the personal stuff that this time of year, like, you want to be able to get ready for Christmas, do your Christmas shopping, you want to be able to plan your Christmas, all of that. And then there's the expectations and everything that's going on for you personally. And it can all add up to a lot. Even on paper, looking at what's going on for you circumstantially, it's a lot at this time of year. So maybe that's where you are right now. That's the experience and feeling you have. You may not feel like you're in crisis mode, but there is so much going on, so much on your plate that it can feel like that. Another way to identify or just know that this is the place you're in. Again, what we're looking at is the difference between when you're in a crisis of overwhelm versus just managing the general day-to-day overwhelm, which is par for the course in the day-to-day experience of being a lawyer. So you may be having those feelings like, this is just too much. I've just got too much. There's just never enough time. And again, there being an urgency and a fear around that. And I say fear because there's that anxiety that is tied up with that. There's not enough time. The running out of time. I'm running out of time. That constant, either that as a thought or that as a feeling. Feeling wise, to come back to it, if it's not the feeling of overwhelm, and actually I think this was even more powerful for me, it's the constant feeling of urgency. That feeling, I've noticed that for me, the feeling that everything is urgent, nothing can wait, everything needs doing at once or should have been done yesterday. Urgency. So is that a feeling you have? Is it overwhelm? Is it urgency? Are you feeling exhausted? Are you feeling depleted? This is another one of my favorites. Especially when I've just completed a big project, it's like feeling a little bit depleted. Are you feeling at breaking point? I want you to again check in with yourself. Use this episode or this session and my words and this opportunity to check in with how you're feeling. You probably haven't had very much of an opportunity to do that right now. And I promise you that just the checking in and acknowledging how you're feeling right now is so important. It's actually, when I think about the steps that I've set out for you to get started on getting out of crisis, a crisis of overwhelm, this actually wasn't the first step, but now we're here. And I'm inviting you to check in with your body and how you're feeling. I actually want to offer this as the pre-step. Like, how are you feeling right now? Can you find the words to describe the emotions that are going on for you right now when there is so much going on? Just take a minute to just acknowledge and recognize that for yourself, for your body. It's already going to help you feel so much better to release the tension of trying to dampen it down and pretend it's not there. Okay. Another way you know you are in this crisis of overwhelm is you are reacting and putting out fires at an insane level. That's the only thing I can say. At a kind of adrenaline or cortisol driven level that's just not sustainable. You might feel you're on autopilot, like going through the motions. You're sort of, maybe the sort of human being in you is just like shut down and you're just being quite robotically trying to get through everything. Maybe you're falling sick. You can feel really drained. Your health is suffering. One of the things that a client, I want to share this with you to see if this is something you do too, that one of my clients does, which is she does that thing where already, right, she's not getting enough sleep. She's working late into the night, dragging herself up, or I should say late into the early hours of the morning, dragging herself up the next day. And what she does when she does shut down her work at the end of the end of the day, I say that in air quotes, because it's usually 2 a.m, sometimes 3 a.m, she's then scrolling on Instagram. And I think the phrase she called it, she was talking about like rebelling. We called it like rebellious me time, where you feel you have so little time for yourself. There is so little reprieve during the day that even if it's 3 a.m. and you've only got like 3 or 4 hours sleep available to you before it all starts again, you go on social media and you start scrolling, because that feels like the only thing you can do to have any sense of control over your time or get time for you. So is that something that you're doing? Are you like doing, there's almost a self-sabotage there, but like rebellious mean time. And then the experience, of course, of this crisis of overwhelm is the Groundhog Day. Like every day feeling not just the same, but actually feeling the same, but getting harder every single day. Okay? So we've talked about all of those different ways in which you might be experiencing this crisis of overwhelm. Let's go to the place that I promise you exists, where that's not your experience anymore, where you've actually thinking about, okay, proactively thinking, okay, I don't want to work like this anymore. I don't want to feel like this in my work anymore. What is it that I do want? And speaking to you, speaking and reflecting like with my colleagues and with myself and with my family about what it is that we would choose instead, and what I see and hear that you want instead of this feeling, this crisis feeling, is it's not that you want to quit. Even if you might be telling yourself, oh, I want to quit right now because it all feels too much. Actually, that's not what you do want and what you would choose. Actually, what you choose or would like is for it to just stop feeling so hard and overwhelming. So you want actually to feel that there's enough time to do your job and to do it well, because you care. You care about doing your job well. That's really important. You also very critically want to have enough time. You want to be able to look after yourself. You want to have time to exercise, right? To get what nourishes you from your life. And by that, I mean the time you spend with loved ones, the time you spend not working, the downtime. Yeah. So you want time for all the other things that matter. This is, I think the reason why I'm spelling this out is because I want you to hold on to that desire and that what you want, not as the thing that you don't have right now, because that's often how we experience it. It's like there's no time for this, there's no time for other things that matter, there's no time to exercise. So instead of thinking of it in the negative as something you don't have, I want to invite you to think about it as your goal. Okay, this is what I'm aiming for. This is what I want. Exactly how am I going to create that? And that's what I'm going to start in this series. This is what I'm going to be speaking to help you create it. So can you see, or can you hear rather, the difference there? Instead of talking about what you wish or what you don't have, what's lacking in your life right now, we want to focus on that being a goal that you are like aiming towards, moving towards, and looking for solutions that are going to get you there. So today's solution, what I'm going to offer you, and it's something you can start doing right now. Remember I said this is a strategy you can do today. I want to offer that the first most important step, right, is that you change your thoughts, change your thinking about time. The first thing The number one thing that's going to get you out of this crisis of overwhelm is if you change your thoughts about time, and you change them from thinking that you aren't in control of time, you don't have enough of it, to thinking there's enough time and time is within your control. It's that simple. Stop thinking, I don't have enough time and I'm not in control of it, and start thinking deliberately, intentionally, believing there is enough time and that time is something within my control. Here's what's going to happen when you do this. Actually, before I tell you what will happen when you do this, here's what I want to offer, because already I know for sure you're going to be feeling some resistance to this. I'm going to speak to that resistance more fully in a moment. But what I want to offer is that this solution, this strategy of changing your thoughts, isn't about pretending that the world is different to what it is. It isn't about lying to yourself. This is sometimes what my clients will say to me when they first start doing thought work. That's what we call it in Be the First, my progression program for Black lawyers. They say, well, I can't just lie to myself when I know the opposite is true. And what I want to offer is this isn't about pulling the wool over your own eyes and pretending something's true that isn't. This is about you understanding that how important, how significant your thinking is in creating your experience. Your thoughts create your reality. So the more time you spend thinking, I don't have enough time, I'm not in control of time, the less time you will have, or the stronger that experience of not having enough time is going to be, and the less in control of time you will be. In other words, instead of using your brain and your thoughts as what you observe in the world or observe in your experience, using your brain and your thoughts to create your experience. This is how powerful thoughts are. This is the power of thought work. This is how results are created. This is how you can turn a situation completely around. You will hear me if you've been following me for a while, and if you're new to me, one of the key philosophies I teach is to go from take yourself from thinking I'm the only one in the room to thinking I'm the first. That is just a thought shift. A shift in your thoughts, a way of thinking that you have the ability to do, you have the power to do, and will completely change the experience you have as a Black lawyer in a white world, just by changing your thoughts. And it's the same principle here. Like the awareness of like what you're thinking right now and thinking you don't have enough time and you're not in control of it, you can change your thoughts to thinking there is enough time and time is within my control. So here's what's going to happen when you start actively thinking that. The first thing you're going to notice is you're immediately going to feel calmer. You're going to already feel more in control. And what that means is, what's going to happen is you're going to then, how you show up, how you behave, how you act in your day and in how you approach the circumstances of all this work and all of these things that need doing, is you're already going to be much more creative and proactive in how you approach that pile of things to do. So you're going to be more creative, more proactive. You are going to immediately as well reduce the drama in your brain, the kind of it's too much, oh, they keep giving me stuff, all of that internal chatter that goes on when you're in a crisis of overwhelm, right? That's immediately going to be reduced when you have the thoughts like there is enough time and I am in control of my time. And just reducing that drama is going to you are going to win back so much time by not procrastinating. Like the drama of it's too much and I'm overwhelmed, that uses up so much headspace, so much bandwidth, so much time. It makes you procrastinate. It can create that freeze response where you just don't know where to start. I've been there. Like there is so much going on and that I need to do and it's all urgent. I don't even know where to start. So you just procrastinate. So you don't start. Whereas changing your thoughts is going to reduce, remember, it's going to calm your brain down. It's going to reduce the drama that makes you procrastinate and freeze. From this place of feeling calmer, more in control. You're going to be able to look at your to-do list. You're going to see it with fresh eyes, with more of a solution focus. And that solution focus means you're going to focus on what you can control. So things that before just never seemed available to you are going to feel more available to you, like saying no more often, for example, or managing expectations when you're given work, like being much more clear, like having looked at your to-do list, like these are the expectations, like I can do this, but I can do this not until then, such and such a time. Like really engaging with people on the deadlines and the expectations they have of you. Because this is what I see. This came up in one of the Be The First coaching sessions, where what was happening, what I observed was one of my clients was really, so much was being asked of her, and she was so overwhelmed with the demands that she just became, again, it was a bit like that autopilot and sort of switching off and going through the motions with her work, where she just couldn't even engage with the people who were delegating to her anymore. She'd sort of resigned herself or given up. I can't quite put my finger on how to describe it, but it was almost a detachment. I think that's a good way of describing it. It became so detached. I think it's a self-preservation thing, where she wasn't even engaging on like this is what you can expect from me because of all of the other things that I've got going right now. Or that I can, literally be able to say, I do not have capacity for this. It's an interesting thing how often, or how I should say, how infrequently you are saying, I do not have capacity for this. And I understand that this is an expectation that you take on. You do the work that you are given. But if you think about that for just a second, if the expectation is you always do the work that you are given, at a certain point, like the number of people giving you work will reach a point that is beyond your ability to do it, even if you work 24 hours a day. So there is a limit that you will reach. And so that's why the ability to say no is so important. But what we want to do is we want to say no. We want to be able to say no when we see ourselves coming up against that limit. We don't want to wait till we get to that limit before our body says no and you burn out. Yeah? So one of the things about having this feeling of calm and being more in control is you can, with much more authority, say no and manage expectations. That's one of the things you can look at that's within your control. You will also be able to triage your to-do list. I love this, and this works for me so well. It's where, and I talk about triage. Triage, for those of you who aren't sure what that means, it's what they do in the emergency room. So in the ER, in accident and emergency, when there are like a million things to do, a million patients coming in, emergencies coming up, and what they do is they have to assess. There's an assessment of every single crisis or emergency, and of figuring out like what can wait, what needs to be dealt with right now, what doesn't need to be dealt with, what's a false alarm, all of that, being able to look at everything that's on your plate and be able to triage it. And what I want to recommend in this place of there is enough time, I'm in control of my time, with that thinking that creates calm and creates the feeling of being more in control, you then look at your to-do list and you can aggressively eliminate. That's what I was doing at the end of November. Aggressively eliminating things from my list. And I use the word aggressive because I think I needed the aggression to get myself out of the holding on to the fact that, but I can do everything. I need to do everything. I needed to aggressively override that default of doing everything, getting it all done, going into battle with everything, no matter what. And just saying yes and yes and yes to everything. I had to be aggressive with myself. You don't have to be aggressive with yourself. It was what was required to overcome my desire to just achieve all of these things. So you want to eliminate, you want to automate what you can, anything you can do that you can automate, make it automatic. And you want to delegate. I'm actually going to do a separate, it won't be quite part of the Overwhelm series, but I'll do it quite close to it. I might change my mind about that. I might make it part of this series. But the delegation is absolutely key. Very hard to do when you're in a crisis of overwhelm. And that's why, and it's really, but it's really, really important. It's one of the things when you feel you are in control of your time that you are in a much better place to be able to do, versus there's not enough time, I'm not in control, very hard to delegate from that place. Okay, so I've just given you a number of examples of actions you will take, of behaviors that will come so much more naturally and easier to you when you change your thoughts and you're feeling calmer and more in control. So you'll hear what we've done is talked about feeling in control just by choosing to think you are in control. It works. I promise you. You practice this work, you practice that thought, you practice it so that you believe it. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that in a moment. And you will feel more in control. So I want you to, if you're feeling doubtful about whether this works, I actually want to invite you to trust me and to try this. Try this process and see how it works. It's working for my clients. It works for me every time. The changing of your thoughts changes everything. It sounds too simple. It sounds like it can't possibly work. I assure you it works when you follow the process. Okay? Actually, there's one thing I did want to add. And I put this as an add-on with my notes. One of the things that I do when I'm in this higher state of really thinking at a higher level, because that's what it is. It's higher level thinking when you can take your brain to the place. Even though there's lots going on around you, when you can actively take your brain to the place, I'm in control, I have enough time. One of the things you will also observe is that there are times when actually what you need is just a rest. And I don't mean, it sounds obvious because you're probably thinking, oh, well, I'm exhausted, I know I need to rest. But actually, to just take a 10-minute power nap. I used to do this in the office all the time when I was working long hours in the city. And I do this in my own office right now. And that is, well, it looks slightly different. Right, so when I was in the city and I was working in the office, and we would have been in the office every day, I would go to the bathroom and I would have like a power nap in the ladies. And it would literally be a 5 minutes of, I wouldn't need the bathroom. I would just go in and I'd be in a cubicle and I would just take 5. And it would be 5 minutes where I'm not looking at a screen, I'm not talking to anybody, I'm just calming, I'm resting my eyes, and I would just like have this, I call it like my body shut down. I would just shut down my body and just relax it completely, take 5 minutes. That would be like my power nap, okay? And, you know, if you're sitting in a bathroom cubicle, you're not going to fall asleep and then forget you're at work, so don't worry. But it's just a timeout. Sometimes that can be enough to give you a little bit of a boost, right, to go back to your list, to go back to your tasks. Here in my office, I have a yoga mat in my office, and I just put my mat down and I will literally lie down. And sometimes I'll set my alarm for 10 minutes. I don't normally use to, but need to, but if I'm feeling really, really tired, that's something I will do. So I'll just lie down and I'll close my eyes. I'll just be completely flat on my back. One of the things I find, and you might find this, is just the being upright and sat still at my desk the whole time for long periods of time. It's almost like there's an energy drain from my brain all the way. I almost feel like the gravitational pull of energy down into my feet that leaves me feeling depleted, right, when I'm working for long stretches of time. So just lying flat on my back, like this might not be an option in the office, but maybe it's an option on a day when you're working from home, just for 5 to 10 minutes, like resets that energetic field. It's hard to explain. You should try it and just see how that feels. But just taking the pressure off the lower part of your body and just, I don't know if it helps your heart to pump blood around your body. I'm not sure what happens scientifically. If you know what happens, write in and tell me. But that can be really powerful. Okay? Another example of the kind of strategy your brain will offer you when you are in that state of calm and in control. Okay. And the result of all of this is you are going to get out of crisis mode. Switching your thoughts from I don't have enough time, I'm not in control, to there's enough time, I am in control of my time. That is going to get you out of crisis mode. I promise you, when you practice that and you learn how to change your thinking, you know how to think on purpose, those empowering, much more useful thoughts about time and your relationship with it. And as I said, you will always be able to get yourself out of overwhelm by changing your thoughts, by using this strategy. Treat it as a reset button. All right, let's talk about how you do that. The first thing is you have to believe that you can change your thoughts. I mean, actually, this is what I wrote in my notes, but in fact, do you have to completely believe you can change your thoughts to actually try it? Maybe not. So maybe I'm going to take that back and say, believe, be willing to try, be willing to give it a go, be willing to be curious. So even if you don't believe you can change your thoughts, because a lot of you actually, this might be new to you, the idea, well, I can change my thoughts. No, I can't. I can choose how to think. No, I can't. It's like, yes, you can. And if this is new to you, then what I want to offer is, I want to invite you to believe me and that it's true. But even if you are skeptical and you doubt it, I just invite you to be curious enough to try it. So we want to be open. Go into following these steps, open and be willing to see, willing to investigate and see if this will work for you. So be open and curious, willing to believe. The second one is I want you to notice your current thoughts about time and how this is creating or aggravating the feelings of stress and overwhelm. Okay, I talked about this at the beginning about how you may be thinking. I have no control over my time's not my own. I want to invite you to just notice what you think about time every day. Write it down, have a look at those thoughts. And when you think those thoughts, how does it make you feel? Notice how stressed you feel when you think those thoughts. Notice how overwhelmed you feel when you think those thoughts. The thought, I have no control over my time, I'm not in control of my time. Like you can't have, what is it I hear so much from my lawyers? It's like, well, as a lawyer, everything's unpredictable. There's no way of me controlling my time and planning my week. This is something we're going to come to in this series, by the way, planning and how important that is for managing overwhelm. So make sure you tune in next week as well, because I'll be doing part 2 of this series. But the point is that a thought like I have no control over my time, it seems so harmless and so innocuous. And actually, that is creating the result for you every single moment that you think it. It's creating the exact result of you not having control over your time. So it becomes self-fulfilling. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to change. Or rather, we're trying to give you or get you thinking thoughts that are more usefully self-fulfilling. So thoughts that will be self-fulfilling, but in a useful way. Okay? Because thoughts are self-fulfilling. Your thoughts create your reality. So your second step then, as I just talked about what I just spoke to, was you really being willing to notice what you currently think about time. We did this whole session in one of my Be the First programs. Not one of my Be the First programs. Be the First is the program in one of my group coaching groups where I just got everybody to brainstorm, take 5 minutes on the coaching call to brainstorm what are your thoughts about time. And I wrote them all up on my whiteboard and all these incredible and it was surprising. This is the interesting thing about doing this work and actually being willing to write these things down is you will be surprised about the thoughts you have about time. They will surprise you. So take a minute to write them all down. Okay, once you've been aware of what your thoughts are and how they make you feel, those emotions, those negative emotions of stressed and overwhelmed, maybe panicked, right? Then comes the step of choosing thoughts about time that will serve you, thinking on purpose about time in a way that makes you feel calmer and more in control. How do I do this, you ask? How do I choose thoughts that are going to make me feel calmer and more in control? I'm going to offer you some examples. So I have actually so many thoughts, really empowering, really powerful thoughts that I choose about time, and I choose them regularly. I practice believing them regularly and I share them. So in Be the First, when you join, it's one of the things I do. It's one of the wonderful things I do is I offer you thoughts to you build up a thought bank. A bank of thoughts that are really empowering, really serve you and help to create the result and the goal and the progression that you want, okay? So one of the things I do to help you with this thought bank is I share with you the thoughts that I choose that are very empowering for me and I know create the results that you want to create. And so I offer you some. And you have this wonderful advantage, of course, of being in a group coaching scenario where you also get to hear and like share and brainstorm each other's ideas for empowering thoughts as well. It's so good. It's one of my favorite sessions that I lead in Be the First, and you'll find it so powerful when you join and you do one of these sessions. Okay, so the one I want to offer you, which is, it's perhaps, isn't my go-to, it's probably one of my oldest and most empowering, and it's there's enough time for everything that matters. That is a thought. There's enough time for everything that happens. It's a thought that I choose. It's a thought that I choose to believe, and I choose it over and over and over again, and it has become a belief that I can take my brain to. All right. And just like to give you context for that and why it's supposed specifically there's enough time for everything that matters, is it came as a result of me reading Seneca, who wrote this. It's the shortest book ever, appropriately called On the Shortness of Life. It's amazing. It's on my bookshelf there somewhere. And I might reread it this December, actually. It's just such an incredible, sobering, but life-affirming piece of work. So Seneca is a Stoic philosopher, and he wrote about the shortness of life. And from reading that book, this was a thought that I adopted for myself. There's enough time for everything that matters. And I choose that thought whenever I can feel the overwhelm creeping up. And it worked so effectively for me in November as well. Okay. Another two thoughts I want to offer you, which were thoughts shared by my clients when they did this exercise. So one of my clients, they chose the thought, I create time. So again, one of the things we do is we do work on creating time. Isn't that amazing? So I don't just take you in Be the First. What I teach you is time control. And part of that isn't just you getting control of your time. It's actually getting to a place where you believe you can create time. Like, what about being able to create time for the things that matter? So this is what one of my clients chose when we did this work. So powerful. I can create time. And then another thought that I really was just a real hit in one of our sessions was time is mine. Time is my resource. And this came from a client who felt previous to that time was something that everybody else around him felt that they could control and be in charge of. And they got to decide his time. And so this exercise was really powerful for him, helping him to see that actually time is his. It's his resource and he gets to use it however he wants. So empowering. So pick one of those thoughts. I want to offer you to recommend that you do that right now. Just choose one and decide which one you're going to try out and which one you want to practice. Okay? All right. As I said, you are going to experience some resistance with this for sure. Especially if you are in crisis, your brain won't want to believe that it's as simple as changing your thoughts. And even when you're not in crisis, you might not think that this might feel a little bit impractical and woo. What I want to offer is a few things. Number one, resistance is completely normal. We're not taught this. We're actually not taught the power of your thoughts. I only learned it when I became a coach. So please be aware that it's almost part of the process to resist this idea first. But I'm hoping that you're willing to trust me and curious enough to try. And that's my second recommendation is be curious. Be willing to try. Like, what have you got to lose? Changing your thoughts. It doesn't require any financial investment. It doesn't require you risking anything. All you have to do is be willing to try to look at your thoughts, the thoughts you have right now that aren't serving you, and try on new and better thoughts that will serve you, make you feel calmer and more in control, and then have that knock-on effect of how you then show up to your work and your ability to see your work and see how whatever the quantity is, your ability to see it and triage it and to have control of it, focus on what you can control, all of that comes from the changing of the thoughts. And then the third thing I want to offer is practice. We call this thought work. I call this thought work in Be the First for a reason. Yeah, I teach you thought work. It's a practice. Don't hold the new thought in your head. Okay, write it down. Put it somewhere you can see it, where you're going to read it every single day. Practice thinking it. You are almost certainly very well practiced at thinking the thought time is out of my control. I don't have enough time. There aren't enough hours in the day. It's the kind of thing we hear and say all the time. So that's been well practiced. So if you want to change your thoughts, you have to practice the new thought, right? So that your brain gets used to the idea of going to that place, going to a place of feeling more in control and feeling calmer, okay, of thinking those thoughts. It requires that practice. So even if you don't believe it today and right away, when you repeatedly think something, think on purpose, you write it down, you see it, you will start to believe it. So I want to invite you, get out of crisis right now. Stop what you're doing, literally. Take a minute, take a breath. I want to invite you to do this work. I really wanted this episode to be something that you could use now when you're feeling overwhelmed. Stop what you're doing, take a breath, write down what you're thinking about time right now. Just one thought. What do you think about time? Notice how it feels. And then borrow my thought. Borrow the thought, there's enough time for everything that matters. Or create your own thought. And just sit with that thought for a moment. And now get back to your list, get back to your work. All right, I hope that's been really helpful. I really do. For sure, if you do even one of these things, just to stop, just to breathe, just to notice your thoughts, and just to see and be curious about what if I change them, that is already going to start to change how you feel, which will change how you show up. Okay? All right, so this is just a glimpse of what I teach in Be the First. So this is my career progression program for mid to senior Black lawyers. And if that is you, if you experiencing a lot of overwhelm at the moment, if your biggest challenge feels like not enough time, so much to do, then Be the First is the room you want to be in. We do a lot of work on this because progression is also, there's two things I want you to think about. One, having more control over your time and being able to do this job with more ease, less overwhelm and stress and anxiety. That is progress, my friend. That is progress that is worth your investment of time. It's worth your investment of money. Think about all of those things that matter beyond work that right now are not getting the time and attention that they deserve and need from you. Yeah, and time control helps to create that. And that's what we work on in the program. That is progress. Yeah, you having control over your time. And then the other aspect of this is that you progressing to the next level is going to require a higher level of time control from you. Yeah, there's going to be more responsibility at the higher level, more required of you at the higher level. It's not actually going to be possible for you to physically be doing everything yourself at that higher level. So these skills, what I teach you in time control, yeah, is so critical for that next step. So that when you get there, you know you're not going to be there and be overwhelmed with the next level of expectations that are going to be required of you. Yeah, so that you can get there and succeed at that next level. We start working on this now. We don't wait till you get there before we help you manage your time or be in control of your time. We do it now. You build the skills now so you know you've got them when you get there. And I want to add, there are so many of you out there who are holding back from going to that next level because you're afraid of what it will mean for your time. You already feel exhausted and overwhelmed at this level. And so your overriding feeling, the stopper actually on your career progression is that, well, when I get there, it's going to be even worse, even harder. And that's why joining Be the First is so good. Honestly, when this happens, I find it just so uplifting and just fulfilling and amazing when I see your relationship with time and you being in control of it, that change, and you feel and see that there is a way for you to progress to a next level and actually step up to being much more in control of your time, to step up to the next level and that not mean you working harder or working longer hours. And it actually requiring of you that you take more control, you be more in control, instead of having this self-fulfilling, I don't have enough control over my time, there isn't enough time, it's like this in this industry, it's impossible, there's just more. Yeah, that thinking will really, you'll really struggle with that thinking at the next level, at partnership level or at GC level. So we want to be building the skill set of being in control of your time right now where you're at. So if any of that speaks to you, join Be the First. If you are mid to senior level black lawyer, I'd love to welcome you into the program. All right, okay. There is a link in the notes, in the captions, in the show notes. There is a link for you to book a consult with me to join Be the First if you're a mid to senior black lawyer. So make sure you click on that link. I know a lot of you are thinking about your plans for next year, what you're going for next year, what's sustainable next year. So book in with me. We will have a chat about where you're at, and let's see if Be the First is the right program for you. All right. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found that really useful. It's been my pleasure. As always, I'll be back next week with part 2 of the Overwhelm series, just for you at this fun but a little bit crazy time of year. Bye for now.